House Baratheon is in something of a dire state in the present of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm not just talking about the one true king, Stannis Baratheon, starving to death outside of the walls of Winterfell, as he is wont to do. No, I'm talking about the entire family, as the current generation may be its last, given the fact that there is not a lot in terms of kids that are going to be continuing this dynasty if we were looking at only the legitimate sons of House Baratheon. Renly tragically died without issue as Loras Tyrell was unable to produce an heir. We see Stannis does have one daughter, Shireen Baratheon, who he does intend, as of his sample chapter in the Winds of Winter, Theon's sample chapter in the Winds of Winter, saying that effectively Shireen is going to continue the dynasty. She is to be queen if Stannis dies. But unfortunately, we do know from George R. R. Martin that Stannis is going to burn Shireen, similar to what happened in the show, but hopefully in a way that will make significantly more sense for the characters involved. Beyond that, Robert Baratheon had 3 children, quote unquote, all of whom are actually the bastards of Cersei and Jaime Lannister. But with that said, Robert Baratheon had many other children outside of his marriage, and today I want to go through each of those individuals and discuss their future in A Song of Ice and Fire. We know of roughly 15 to 16 bastards issued by Robert Baratheon. We only know of 15 throughout the entire series, and only about half of those are named, but we do also have a prophecy that says that he has 16, that being from the Woods Witch Maggie the Frog, who tells Cersei that she will have 3 kids, but the king will have 6 and 10. The reason we know of so many of them is that so many of them have already died. In A Clash of Kings, in response to Stannis' letter, Cersei undertakes a massacre of Robert Baratheon's bastards in the city of King's Landing, and she sends out orders to the realm writ large to hopefully eliminate all of these threats to the legitimacy of her 3 children. We only know of one named bastard of Robert Baratheon killed in this way, that being the baby Bara, who was fathered on a prostitute in King's Landing, who Ned had encountered during his search for Robert's children in A Game of Thrones. So RIP to her. Luckily, the Gold Cloak who did that got washed off a ship on his way to the Night's Watch. Only one of Robert's bastards had any significant role in HBO's Game of Thrones, that being Gendry. He's not Gendry Waters. Bastards only get that surname if they are officially acknowledged by whoever is their royal or lordly parent, but he fills pretty much the same role for the first 3 books as he does in the first 3 seasons, with one notable exception, which I will get to. He spends a lot of time with Arya, traveling throughout the Riverlands. He goes along with the Night's Watch to join up, and that ends up protecting him from this purge that Cersei instituted. And we see him kind of travel with Arya and eventually meet up with the Brotherhood Without Banners. He's actually knighted by Beric Dondarrion. He becomes one of the Knights of the Hollow Hill. He is Sir Gendry, technically. And unfortunately for Melisandre, he is not sold to her by the Brotherhood Without Banners. She does not come into contact with Gendry in any way, nor does Gendry have any idea who his father is. As far as he's concerned, he is just lowborn. While Arya is our main viewpoint on Gendry, he does pop up in another viewpoint's character later on down the line, specifically in one of Brienne's last chapters of A Feast for Crows. She encounters him on the road, where he's now working as a smith at the inn at the crossroads, which is great given that he has quite a skill set as a blacksmith, having forged this bull helmet that is his signature. We hear that he has spent some time here, and he is converted to the faith of the Lord of Light, which is quite interesting, given the fact that the king of the Seven Kingdoms typically worships the Seven, whereas now this bastard son of the king is worshipping this foreign deity. He ends up saving Brienne from this melee she gets into with 7 other individuals, including Rorge and Biter, these 2 criminals who are also going to the Night's Watch with Gendry. And the last thing we see of him is him saving Brienne's life as she is about to fall unconscious. It's also worth noting that he very much resembles his father at this point. When she first encounters him, Brienne thinks that Gendry is Renly, and while that might seem weird to show watchers, given how Renly looked there, Renly was supposed to be effectively super jacked and just a younger version of Robert before he got fat, but the show decided to change that for some reason. There's another bastard that Arya interacts with, that being Bella from Stony Sept. She does not have nearly as big of a role as Gendry, but she does flirt with Gendry, which is a little weird given that they don't know they are half siblings. She, however, does know that the king is her father, at least she has a good inkling. You see, she's named after a battle, the Battle of the Bells, which, if you are a fan of this channel, you have heard about quite a bit, as it is the battle that got Jon Connington exiled from Westeros. Going into this conflict, Robert Baratheon was wounded from a previous fight and was hiding amongst the common folk. And supposedly, while he was hiding amongst the common folk, he fathered Bella on some common girl. I think a prostitute is what she says. And Bella is then named for the battle just before which she was conceived, which is a cool bit of world building in my eyes. But obviously, she is the worst of Robert's bastards, given the fact that she is named for such a terrible battle that Jon Connington should have won. Speaking of Gendry, though, the story that he was given was actually adapted from another one of Robert's bastards, that being Edric Storm, which is such a cool name. It sounds like a fantasy protagonist, which Edric well could be in the future of this series. He is the only officially recognized bastard of King Robert Baratheon, as it would be very difficult for him to claim he didn't know where this kid came from, given the fact that he was conceived in Stannis' marriage bed as Robert got with one of Selyse Florent's cousins on Stannis' wedding night, which Stannis very much took as a slight to his honor, which is fair, though Stannis does tend to take most things as slights to his honor. As such, Edric was kind of shuffled off with other sources of slights against Stannis, as he was given to Renly Baratheon to be warded at Storm's End while Robert was ruling the kingdom from King's Landing. We hear tell of him throughout the first couple books. He is cited as a reason by Stannis for the Lannister bastards not being Roberts, as this kid does not look like these bastards whatsoever. And that is kind of as much as we hear from him in the first two books, but in A Storm of Swords, he gets a pretty significant role. In A Storm of Swords, Edric Storm takes up Gendry's role from the show, being the sacrificial lamb that Melisandre wants to feed to the fire in order to work some sort of R'hllor magic for Stannis Baratheon. This obviously becomes a massive point of contention between her and Sir Davos Seaworth, and it ultimately results in Davos setting Edric free to sail across the Narrow Sea, or row across the Narrow Sea. He's not like Gendry, he doesn't just row to King's Landing, but he actually ends up in Elise, we hear later on in the series, which is quite interesting. That's one of the free cities in Essos, and I do think it could tie in to the series' future. Specifically, Daenerys is likely going to be kind of doing a road trip through Essos on her journey back to Westeros in the Winds of Winter, and I do think it's kind of likely she could encounter Edric Storm on her route, and at that point, there could be some political machinations taking place there. Specifically, I think that Edric Storm is a very likely candidate to be the reason the Baratheon dynasty is going to continue into the future beyond the main series. Specifically, if he encounters Daenerys, I could see Daenerys legitimizing him in exchange for swearing his word that he will not press his claim on the Iron Throne, which makes sense. This is a child with very few resources right now, so he very much doesn't have leverage, and bringing a Baratheon back into the fold and under Daenerys' banner could lend a lot of legitimacy to her cause, especially given the fact that Storm's End right now is probably not going to be held by the Baratheons, but rather the Golden Company. So giving that castle back to its ancestral owners would very much make sense, though the Baratheons did kind of take it from the Dondarrions, or not Dondarrions, Durandons. I always get those names mixed up in my head. Regardless of that, I've also had a little pet theory, or at least thought I had recently, which would be, it would be really fun if Marjorie Tyrell ends up married to a legitimized Edric Storm at the very end of the series, as she's bounced from Baratheon to Baratheon to Baratheon, none of which was able to really have a full marriage with her, either due to dying, being a child, or not being attracted to women. And the last two of her marriages are not, in fact, Baratheon. So for her to end the series married to an illegitimate but now legitimized Baratheon just seems like a nice full circle thing to me, should she end up surviving, which is not a sure thing by any means. I also want to interrupt myself to ask, what do you think the future has in store for House Baratheon? What role do you think these bastards will play? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're down there, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. The last of Robert's confirmed bastards to appear in the main series is also his eldest, that being Maya Stone. Maya lives in the Vale, and we encounter her a few times throughout the series. First from Catelyn Stark's perspective, and later on from her daughter Sansa's. It's quite interesting to see her through Catelyn's eyes, given Catelyn's animosity to Jon Snow, Ned Stark's bastard, but Maya was conceived around the time Robert and Ned were beginning to form their bond, as both individuals were warded with Jon Arryn in the Vale, and during that time, Robert ended up getting with a common girl and producing Maya Stone. Maya actually had some time with her father. While it doesn't seem like she 100% knows that he was the king, she says she has some vague memories of a big, strong man picking her up and throwing her in the air when she was but a wee child, which is very cute, and it's nice to see that Robert did at least have some affection for his kids before later abusing them and his wife. But we also hear that he continued this affection for Maya Stone, as he later suggests after becoming king, bringing her to court in King's Landing, which Cersei very, very promptly shuts down. That is unfortunate, as Maya seems like a fun character, and it would have been cool for her to get to know her father, but she does have some stuff to do in the Vale. In A Feast for Crows, Miranda Royce tells Elaine Stone, aka Sansa Stark, that Maya Stone has had some romantic entanglement with a man named Michael Redford, who's the son of a noble house in the Vale, and he ends up being very hastily married to the daughter of Bronze Jon Royce in order to kind of get away from the shame of having bedded this bastard girl and not end up married to someone with no political acumen whatsoever. But it seems as though this plotline is going to rear its head in The Winds of Winter, as Maya Stone has already appeared in that book. We have a sample chapter from Elaine's perspective where all of these preparations are being made for this tourney at the Vale, and Maya Stone is the one who kicks this chapter into motion, as she's the one who tells Lord Sweet Robin that he has to go down the mountain to greet the Waynwoods, which is the action of this chapter. So it does seem likely that she is doing something at this tournament, perhaps doing something with Michael Redford that could jeopardize his marriage and further create cracks amongst the Lord Declarant and further solidify Littlefinger's position, which could be quite interesting, her working with Littlefinger, as Robert Baratheon was the one who actually empowered this guy to begin with. However, without the knowledge of the lords of Westeros, another bastard was made. Despite the fact only 15 of Robert's bastards are either named or numbered in the main series, a theory has been pitched that one secret bastard exists, someone who comes into the fore in A Storm of Swords and ends up playing a fairly crucial role in the continuing part of the series, in addition to becoming somewhat of a fan favorite character, all while knowing very little about their origins. I am, of course, talking about Satin Flowers of the Night's Watch. Now, I cannot claim full credit for this theory. I discussed it with the Interesting Nerd Club for the first time a few months ago. It was an excellent time. I'd highly suggest you check that video out. But to go over the details, Satin arrives at the Night's Watch around A Storm of Swords, or at some point during A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords. We don't quite know because Jon Snow has gone away from the Wall at that point, and he and Sam only return towards the later half of Storm. But during that time is when Cersei's orders went out to kill all of Robert Baratheon's bastards. If one of Robert Baratheon's bastards was to flee to the Night's Watch to seek clemency where they're not going to be killed, that would be the time to do it. And we see Gendry do the same thing, even unknowingly. Satin arrives during that window and very much matches the appearance of what we would expect from one of Robert Baratheon's bastards, that being the dark hair and potentially growing a beard in A Dance with Dragons, though that is a point of contention with part of the theory that the Interesting Nerd Club pitched. They also pitched that he is a girl. I'm not 100% on that element, but I do think he is Robert's kid. There are also a lot of other little details that very much make sense with this theory. Satin grew up in a brothel. He says my lord instead of my lord. That indicates some sort of nobility. Additionally, geographically, that could make a bit of sense. We have the Greyjoy Rebellion occurring a few years after Robert comes to power, and we know that he goes and fights in this rebellion himself. That is on the western edge of Westeros, and perhaps he stopped by Old Town in order to just have have this visit to one of the most important cities of the Seven Kingdoms on his return celebratory voyage. I very much could see this lining up, and it would very much make sense. And it could make things interesting having this bastard of Robert Stark interacting with this bastard of Lyanna Stark. I said Robert Stark, I meant Robert Baratheon. You know what I mean. But I love the idea that Satin could be Robert Baratheon's bastard. I 100% buy it. Overall, I believe that Robert Baratheon's bastards are going to have crucial roles to play in The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. Not all of them necessarily. I don't think Bella is going to do much, but I think Gendry will likely end up fighting again in the Riverlands and potentially turning his eye northward as the supporters of R'hllor will want to fight against the Great Other. Additionally, I think that Edric Storm could have some role to play in the politics of the Seven Kingdoms, were he legitimized and allowed to retake Storm's End, and Maya Stone seems poised to cause chaos in the Vale, and we all know that Satin is going to be the one true love of a resurrected Jon Snow. Overall, I think despite the dire states of the Baratheon house at the present state of the series, I think there is going to be somewhat of a resurgence at the end of the book series, and I do think that will maybe come along with somewhat of a change in attitudes on bastards and their role in Westerosi society. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it really helps grow the channel. Let me know what you think of all of this in the comments down below. What do you think each of these bastards is going to do? Do you think Satin is a bastard of Robert Baratheon? I'm excited to hear your thoughts, and be sure to like and subscribe while you're down there. I'll have many more videos for you in the near future about A Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, Dunk and Egg, and I look forward to sharing all of that with you very soon. Goodbye, everyone.